Good morning, everyone. Ominous thunder just clapped outside of my window, so it's not an auspicious start to the podcast. How's everybody doing this morning?
Well, good. Thanks for the heads up because that means it's 3 hours away from me here in Eastern North Carolina. So that's good.
And I heard it at the same time as you, Shawn.
Because you're not that far away. Uh, have you guys been watching any of the World Championships for mountain biking? Or yesterday we were watching BMX.
YouTube's a wonderful thing. We usually catch the after the event type of clips from all of it.
I last year when they don't show it on the regular stuff, so I had to buy a membership to Flow Ride, I guess is what it's called, and it's expensive, and the coverage is not great, and the commentators are horrible. And the worst thing this year, I noticed, I was watching the downhill world championships, and it's like very quiet, like no sound at all, except for this like clunking noise every time the mountain bike like was in the air and came down. And I was listening to it, I was like, that doesn't sound real. And why would that be the only sound that you heard? And the more I listened to it, the more I was like, it's the same sound over and over again. And I thought I was crazy. And then I watched Ben Cathro, and he was talking about how they used a canned noise for the mountain bike for some inexplicable reason. And he was talking about how it didn't matter if they cased the jump, if they landed it smooth, like it was just the same noise over and over and over again. Just a weird, I don't know. I'm not happy with how they give the rights to the biggest race in the calendar to somebody who doesn't really do it on a regular basis. So, oh well.
So no canned noises for our races for the 2024 season. Is that what we're
No,
saying?
just real,
Okay.
just real, just
All
real
real.
noise. Yeah,
There you
it's
go.
like
Hashtag all real. Okay, got it.
like a Foley artist, like somebody with two coconuts, like that's the noise of the rear derailleur or whatever. I don't know, but it was just bizarre.
I think it should become part of your role, Shawn, to master your beatboxing skills. You do a voiceover for all of our league videos.
Gotcha. Well, it's one of those things like you don't know how to explain to somebody how to be like a good race commentator, but you certainly know when you're listening to a bad race commentator. And we were watching it yesterday for the team relay, and the guy was just literally describing exactly what we were seeing. It's like, I know that. Like, he couldn't even name the riders. He was like, and the Swiss rider, and it's like, yes, very obvious from the white cross on their jersey. Like, yes, have that information already. Would be nice to have a name. So I think definitely some room for improvement, which, we all have. And I think that's sort of, I guess, kind of what we want to talk about today is things that we are working on improving. As you like to point out, Brian, the summers are not our time off. So what have we been up to around the league?
So the official 2024 season has not started, right? But it kind of has when you're hanging out with all the coach supporters and a ton of coaches on a weekend in Asheville like we did last weekend. Yeah, we're kind of getting started. Absolutely. And yeah, certainly a lot of room for improvement. My end, thanks, Shawn, for the great instruction. I'm a coach supporter for the league and just kind of refreshing current coach supporters and bringing on new ones. And it's always good just to pull out the manual again and yeah, refresh on the basic skills. So I think it was a good session. I think we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and you guys reminded me of things that I've said in the past that I didn't say again, and it's just good for everybody, knock the cobwebs off and kind of make sure everything's good. But like you said, first training weekend was this past weekend in Asheville. We had four new coach supporters get trained, three of them female. So our female cohort of coach supporters is, really, I think, pacing along with the level of female support for coaching that we have in the league. and for participation. Like, we are a high percentage. I think we're running about 40% female coach supporters right now, which is great. So it helps for everyone when every aspect of the league sort of matches what your goals are, so that you're sort of walking the talk that you're saying. So really glad to have more coach supporters on board. And I was impressed with everybody and learn something new. Like, that's my favorite part of training people, is whenever I get to learn something from them. And one of our coach supporters introduced something that you'll be seeing. I saw it the next day when we actually led the OTBS 101s, like, everybody incorporated it. So that's the great thing about having where we come together, kind of share ideas, and then you see it spread throughout our coach support and then throughout the league, which is what we want. So coming up, we do have some more trainings. This weekend, we have our next Asheville location. That one is no longer accepting registrants because the WFA CPR portion is, the online portion is very extensive. So there can't be a night before registration. Like, that's a legit, like, sit down and spend some hours getting that done. No later than the week before your class. Like, you can't wait till the night before. You will not make it. So we cut off the registrations the Tuesday before the course because of that. Coming up after that, we do have some spaces left in the first Raleigh weekend, which is August 26th and 27th. The second Raleigh location weekend is sold out. And the Fayetteville sessions that are 30 September and 1 October, there are seats available still in that one. So if you are wanting to find the WFA CPR refresh or the OTBS 101 WFA CPR course, those 2 weekends are still open for you to check out and get registered for. We also really appreciate the fact that IC Imagine has been a really solid partner for us in Asheville for getting us a location indoors. Great. And now with that trail, so got to ride trail, got to actually incorporate some of their, like, flat kind of features into the course, which is kind of nice. So really a great venue for what we were doing for the OTBS 101 courses.
Yeah, and I took a pretty close look at it, Shawn, as a potential event venue for us. And just to let folks know, we are looking for Western venues. That came through loud and clear on the end of season survey. We're trying our best to cut travel time. I say with IC Imagine specifically, it's going to be tight parking to get all of our folks in there until we reduce our event size. But yeah, taking a hard look at it, was great to have Rob from IC Imagine out there and walk the grounds with us. So really appreciate that. But again, we're taking a hard look, trying to get some Western venues for us out there.
And I think that's a good thing to sort of point out is, I've seen a bunch of suggestions coming in for Western North Carolina venues, and the essential issue with Western North Carolina trails is not the trails. The trails are fantastic. The trails are awesome. It's in the North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League hierarchy of needs. It's parking is sort of the top priority, and infield is the next. And it's those things that are the difficult hurdles to cross with a lot of the venue suggestions that we get for Western North Carolina. And we can't make many compromises in those things in order to make a great trail work. Is that a fair assessment, would you say, Brian?
Yeah, particularly when it comes, what I found is having been out with the venue survey team several times now, it's really the marriage of an appropriate trail system and an infield big enough for me to manage good starts and finishes into that trail system. There are many places that you look, that's a great NICA loop, but I can't get to it with a big group of riders in or out of that trail system. That seems to be the challenge out west, in addition to, you're exactly right, the parking. for all of us. So it's the marriage of those three things, which is sometimes the challenge. The good news, well connected with a lot of trail advocacy organizations, talking with even this week, some discussion with Chris Huggins up in Durham about a developing trail system in Durham County, Durham doesn't really have decent trail systems around there. So things are developing, and I think the broader North Carolina community is getting this idea of this is a very good thing to invest in, some venues to encourage folks to get outside on their bikes. And so I've got a sense that things are improving. It's just going to take a little bit of time for some of those to happen, but it's an encouraging sign.
And I think if we think sort of long term with Teen Trail Corps and the youth advocacy aspect of that, if your area maybe is starting to discuss building a trail, or there is maybe some openness to a discussion like that, leveraging your team and those student athletes to take advantage of that Teen Trail Corps advocacy aspect and actually advocate for trails in your area to be built, and then bring in the league staff to talk with municipalities about how we can bring an event there and what our requirements are, and the economic impact that we have on the local area helps justify some of that financial outlay that these municipalities or other organizations are going to have. So it's, if you plan correctly, you can really kind of make use of the league itself in order to get a local trail built. And I think that is something that, Shell, you would be more than happy for someone to contact you about, how the student athletes can get appropriately involved and things like that.
Definitely.
All right. Well, let's talk about handbook revisions, because that's the other thing we've been working on this summer. Changes to the handbook and the rules. And there's a process to this. We, for the first time in league history, we put out to all of the coaches, give us your suggestions of things that need to change. And so we put that out. We took those for about 2 months. I think we had that open until the end of June. And then we spent July kind of working through those with the league rules committee and making suggestions that we then sent off July 31st to NICA for their approval. Is that a fair assessment of the process that we put into place this year, Brian?
Yeah, it is, and just really appreciate all the feedback, one through the forum, but I've always said, Brian at northcarolinamtb.org, send me your ideas, send me your suggestions. I heard a lot of that throughout the season, as did you, Shawn, on things we should do, maybe to change the way we do business in North Carolina. And I know we're about to talk through that. So not a lot in those forms surprised us. We were well prepared for it. But yeah, we're always willing to hear the feedback. And Shawn, thanks for pushing back to folks who submitted. Here's the response. Here's what we did with that recommendation, one way or the other. So yeah, appreciate the feedback from everyone. We'll do our best to always give you the feedback on what we're doing with your league, as I like to describe it.
Yes. And, and to sort of get under the hood a little bit, like our league rules committee is 5 members. So it's 5 people from around the state that are kind of adding their experience and wisdom to things and looking at it from their perspective, so that we can have a greater discussion about stuff and modify, tweak, accept whatever it is that we need so that we can make the league better. And some of those things, so we've got some pretty nice big changes that I think a lot of people will appreciate, that we've heard throughout the seasons, different things. And the first one is category table changes. We're really, I think, streamlining some stuff and making it a bit more obvious what we're doing. So you want to talk about this, Brian?
I do. Let me preface it back to process, just so everyone's aware. We have submitted these changes to NICA. So their rules committee will review. Amanda Carey, the president, will review. Initial indications are everything we've submitted looks pretty good, likely to be approved. We will not see the official approval of that in publication into the handbook until December. That's just because that's the NICA cycle to do handbook changes, particularly for spring leagues. What we will do as a league is, before we open registration for the season in October, we will publish on our website. Here is the Appendix B for North Carolina that we are using, including the category table, so everyone can reference that. And folks here on the cast, coaches in particular, know that category petition table very important early in the season to know where athletes are initially placed and the like. So we will do our best to communicate what these changes are in advance of the season. So I just want to preface that. I would say, as it relates to categories, Shawn, two significant changes. One is a change to the middle school A category. So in North Carolina, there will only be one middle school A category for both boys and girls. No change to girls. They've always had a middle school A category, but now we're going to combine middle school boys into one A category. So 7th and 8th grade A is just one category for boys. And this helped us with some of the feedback we got about that weird grade dynamic where you fleet up and you still want to race with your grade peers. And like, we'll keep it all in an A category. If you're competing a little bit above your middle school peers, we'll put you in A, and you kind of stay in A until you category up and out of that. So I think that's one of the big changes. The other is our high school categories is now all ability based. So below varsity maintains, there will be 3 ability-based high school categories, 1, 2, and 3. And you'll see it listed that way in the category table. And I think the big intent there, Shawn, was really the idea of a brand new high school athlete, whether they're in 11th grade, 12th grade, we're going to give them a place to start and not throw them right into a multi-lap race right off the bat. And still, you can category petition. That athlete shows some promise and some ability. Okay, let's fleet him or her up to a higher category. But initially, let's give high school student athletes the most appropriate place to start. And again, we went through all the category petition pathways that will be published in that table. All the coaches can take a look at that. It will be familiar to folks in terms of percentages of that previous category fleeting up any particular year. But I think those are the 2 big ones, Shawn, but happy to get your reflections on it too for the category table. Or for folks.
Yeah, and I think one of the good things was that having that MSA category meant that we could have a way for 6th graders to petition up into a more competitive category than what they were typically doing. So the workaround that we've been doing was like 6th graders could petition into 7A, and then the next year they were having to petition to stay 7A instead of automatically catting up to 8A. And this just simplifies that process, I think, dramatically. The other is, I don't know how many times we heard on coaches' calls about the desire to have for lack of better way of thinking about it, a 1-lap race for high school students that were brand new, just trying to get into it. So I think this really helps a lot. And the nice thing is that it just streamlines everything. And I like that we're decoupling from kind of the grade categories. Like originally we had freshmen and then JV1 and JV2, like it was sort of a mess. And this just makes it ability based and makes it a lot better, I think, in my opinion. The other one that's kind of big that goes along with this is going to be the update to race points. And this is always something that we get lots of questions and feedback on, and lots of different ideas. And those ideas are varied and sometimes at odds with each other. And so we've tried to do our best to make this as equitable as possible. And so what we're doing is that the MSA categories and the high school 3 category, they will get a 40-point bonus on top of the published points for places in the category tables. So if the winner were to get just off the top of my head, 150 points for the regular category. There's a 40-point addition to that, regardless of what place they get. So it's always a 40-point increase. And then the varsity category is going to have a 75-point bonus on top of whatever the placing points are. That is the biggest kind of streamlined way of looking at it. The other decision that's being formalized that wasn't written down, but that will be written down now, is that a middle school athlete who is racing in a high school category does not score points for their middle school team, for their team. So their individual performance is for them and they do great, but it does not go back to their team. So something to consider if you are looking at petitioning to have one of your middle school student athletes racing in a high school category. Any thoughts on that one, Brian?
I would just say that table you described for the points will also be published in our appendix, so coaches can reference. They can look at the category, look at the points. It'll be clear to everyone.
All right. And a couple of other big things. So we are eliminating bonus points for doing all the races of the season. And there's several reasons for that. One of them is equity. We know that Browns Creek is a hall for some of our Western North Carolina teams. And as we push towards Western North Carolina venues, those are going to be a hall for some of our Eastern teams like yours, Brian. How long of a drive is it from where you are to Asheville?
Because I obey all local traffic regulations, including speed limits, a good 6.5 hours out to Asheville from here.
So a bit of a trek, right?
It's a little bit of a haul.
And the other one is that, and it's a rare occurrence, but you see it, a student athlete that is injured and unable to race, lining up for the start and starting, but pulling immediately off the course just so they get credit for starting the race, so that they get those bonus points at the end of the season. That's something that has been a concern and that we want to be mindful of. And so eliminating bonus points just kind of takes both of those problems off the table and makes it just a better experience for everybody. The other is the independent rider policy. And that's something that, Brian, you came in and you had a unique perspective on this. And so I'll let you explain this, because I really like what you've kind of developed in your first season as league director.
Well, thanks for that. I guess my unique perspective comes in two parts. And the first is this whole discussion of putting the way North Carolina does business in writing in our appendix. And so the league had a history of a policy by practice of not supporting independent riders or racers, which I agree with. We do not want our student athletes, quote unquote, unsupported when they show up to our races. This is not the league where you just sign up for the race, you come in on the weekend, you do your thing, and you go away. We're a youth development program. We want that student athlete to be supported by a structure at our races. And like we've talked before, Shawn, for if we had independent riders, like I become their head coach on the weekend, right? Like we don't have the bandwidth per se. So I wanted to document that we don't do independent riders, racers, but we do have those categories of interested student athletes that are outside a team's boundaries, so to speak. Or the situation we had, I think, a couple times last year, I'm in the school system, but I'm going to a charter school for a year outside the boundary, but I'm going to come back for high school, and the policy did not account for that. So we're doing that. We're going to account for that. We're going to say, okay, student athlete interested in being part of your team, organization, and the league, not part of the boundary. So bring that athlete onto the team. We're just going to, like we did last season, count that athlete separately for scoring purposes, almost like they're going to that school they're at as a quote unquote team. So it's a bridging solution to hopefully maybe start a team at that school or location, get a new team up in the county, vice the, hey, your mom or dad has to start a team to be part of this league, which I think some people were kind of looking at and just didn't seem quite right. So yeah, we tried it a couple times last season, Shawn. I think it worked well. That's the feedback we got. So let's just write it down and establish that as a policy. So coaches, as they go into the season, know they have an athlete come their way. Yeah, we can make this work. And so I think that's my perspective on it, Shawn.
Yeah, and I feel like there were a couple of things like we were seeing with the independent rider policy, like there's only really one independent rider that I'm aware of that actually after 1 year started a team. Like it was just kids looking to race another series. And I think that really discounts the fact that NICA is dramatically more than just showing up on a weekend to race and show up for your race and drive away. I mean, that's kind of what normal racing is about, but it's so much more. And so this sort of like pulls them in to that NICA experience more. The other is that it is very mindful of the NICA handbook, which has a lot of information in it about recruiting and how that's not something that we want to go down, where we have teams sort of like vying for different riders trying to compete for this team level thing. Not that we think that that's something going on, but it's just very mindful of that you're not getting this person on your team and then they're scoring points for you. Like they're a part of your team for the NICA experience and for all the things that teams do. And then they're sort of separate so that it's encouraging them to stand up a team so that they can bring more kids from their school into the NICA experience. And I think it's a great bridge.
Yep.
That brings us to outside assistance, which is something that has been, again, one of those policy by practice. We have not assessed any outside assistance penalties for one lap races. And so now we're formalizing that, putting it in the handbook and just saying any one lap race, which is any of the non-middle school A categories and the high school 1 category, will not have an outside assistance penalty. And I like that. We want to encourage those student athletes to just go out, race, have a great time. If something happens, get them back on course as quickly as possible. And the time penalty they suffer from just having the mechanical issue is more than enough to take to not throw another 5 minutes on top of them for getting outside assistance. And then last but not least, got a couple of things that we're now formally putting in writing. The pet policy, which we developed after an unfortunate incident. And then the 100% call-ups that we do, which we've done for several seasons now, but if you notice, it was never written in the handbook. And course length and difficulty, those criteria are now being formalized and put into the handbook. Any thoughts or ideas on that one, Brian?
No, just to reemphasize, coaches will be able to see that on the website before the season begins, just so they can reference what the changes are, particularly the category tables. And I'll just use that as a announcement I did want to make during the cast here. New website is coming. I am on the line with NICA tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to do kind of the final review of our new website, which is very mobile friendly. You can actually see it on your phone or mobile device, which is going to be huge, I think. For
not just see it, you can punch the physical buttons and they take you to the place they're supposed to.
You can manipulate. Yeah, absolutely. And so I just, thinking back to last weekend, it's awesome. Hanging out with our coaches is just super great, right? There's no monopoly on good ideas, like you said, Shawn. And, it's part of the reason I like doing the coach training is like, I get, a lot of good direct feedback. Well, I got one complaint this past weekend from a coach. It was about the website. He
It
was like,
was specifically about the mobile part. He was like, I can't do anything on the phone. We're like, just hold on, man.
That's right. So yeah, so I beg everyone's forgiveness here. I have not been updating our current website very proactively just because I'm kind of waiting for the transition to not have to recreate everything. But give us a few more weeks. I think by the 1st of September, new website will be up and running. You can find information there. So yeah, thanks, Shawn.
And that, to kind of piggyback off of that, like our coach support training and our all of that we've done through Team Snap registration, which is new for us now. And I've had a couple of people reach out to me and they're like, I just want to confirm that I'm registered. So here's what happens. Like Team Snap, you register, it sends you a confirmation. You're confirmed. Like that is the gold standard. And then I communicate with you using the messaging function in TeamSnap, because when you register, it adds you to a team specific to your event. You can see the event information, like the directions to where you're supposed to go, any notes that are there. And then I'm sending messages through TeamSnap, which appear in your inbox using the email address that you're registered for. So it's all kind of like in there, all good. And if you used the TeamSnap, if you use the email address for what you use with your regular TeamSnap, which I highly recommend, and is also tied to your pit zone, then when you open your TeamSnap app, you'll see an additional team that you can access, and it's the team for the event that you registered for. So moving forward, we're going to be utilizing the registration in TeamSnap for as many things as we can outside of the registration in Pit Zone. And I don't know, it's working really well. Brian, what do you think so far? Do you want to go back to Eventbrite?
I like it simply because it's one less tab I have to have open on my browser for Eventbrite. I just have to have the TeamSnap open, and we are going to invest in the TeamSnap website module, so our events will be embedded into our web page. So I'm working that with TeamSnap the end of this month to get that embedded to our website. So if you make a change, I make a change to an event for the league in TeamSnap, people can see that on the website. So I like the consolidation of the technology to streamline things for us and for our folks.
And next steps for the coming season are going to be, I've already started the process of pulling all of the teams into the new season that we're creating in TeamSnap. So you will still have all of your stuff will look the same, but there will just be a new season of NCICL, new teams, and working on the rostering aspect of that, how we're going to be doing that sort of thing. But it'll be that similar experience. The one thing that I ask is I will be creating all of the race events, adventure events, grit events, those sorts of things. And last year, people on their teams were creating the exact same thing. And so when I go in and look at TeamSnap from the league perspective, I would see like 5 or 6 of the exact same weekend. And it's kind of like, you know, there's no real way for me to filter it out. So I will create all the races so that you will have the directions, the schedules, all that good stuff, and be updating that. So you can just leave that as part of your team's calendar and be working on that. And that'll allow you to do attendance and all that sort of thing. But if you want to reach out to me, if there's something that you're not seeing or something that you want to see, like let me know, because it's hard sometimes for me to see it from both perspectives. And that way I can make sure that everything is working. But I would really appreciate that so that we can really maximize our use of TeamSnap for sure. And kind of rolling into that, we've got something coming up preseason wise. We've got several preseason things coming up. And the first one that we want to talk about is going to be League Summit. So, Brian, you've been working real hard on this one, and you got something kind of special to unveil.
So super cool. Took the venue survey team out to the Whitewater Center in Charlotte. a couple weekends ago, looking at it as a potential venue, and we can talk more about that, but locked it in as our league summit location to kick off the 2024 season. And that's the idea. As we open registration October, bring coaches in, any coach can attend. We will keep that registration open to talk about what's going on in North Carolina. I'll give a state of the league. I'll give a preview 2024. Hopefully by then I can get dates and locations for the season nailed down, talk about some of the things we're implementing for the season, but really spend each morning, Saturday, Sunday, Shawn, we're still working the final details on the classes, so to speak, or the seminars, but really give some North Carolina specific training and/or instruction to our coaches. And then Saturday afternoon, the idea is to get out on those 30 miles of trails there at the Whitewater Center and have some group rides together. And we've got a couple ideas in mind. I think we're talking Sunday afternoon, leaving that relatively open for folks to enjoy the center, zip line, rock wall, get in the water, but also a 201 clinic hosted by you, Shawn, for some of our coaches who want some advanced skills. So putting the final details together on it. Hopefully get that out by next week. And like you said, Team Snap registration, super easy and it's good, but should be a good time for everyone to kick off the season for 2024.
And, something to be aware of is that this is a league summit, not a leaders summit. So if you're looking for the leaders summit for the level 3 coach license requirement, those are all online. And I've shared those out in the registration links. They're down at the bottom. There's a button. It's also on our website that you can go to and check out. So the Leader Summit online, held several times per year by NICA National. It's 5 Zoom sessions over successive nights or days, depending upon what schedule you choose. And then the League Summit is going to be good for CEUs, those continuing education units. And that's something that all level 2 and level 3 coaches need to be mindful of, is their CEU requirements. A league summit will definitely knock out some or most of your CEU requirements, as well as some additional modules that are on Pit Zone coach training site, which one of them is for an adventure coach. Another one is the new grit module, Shell, which you brought to my attention at the first training weekend. That was unknown to me as well. So there's 2 there. You can also take the level 1 and level 2 coach trainings again if you are not needing them, and they will count towards your CEUs. So there's a lot of CEU opportunities in Pit Zone, but the League Summit is where we really kind of pull out all the stops and do a lot of really cool things that are very North Carolina specific. The other preseason event, I'm going to turn this over to Shell now. You go and talk to us about preseason grit and adventure.
So our first 2 preseason events will be grit events. Those will be open to all female student athletes and coaches. The first one is going to be October 28th at Kiowee Park in Wilkesboro. So that utilizes the Warrior Creek and Headwater Hubs trails, and possibly some of the OVT trails as well. So that'll be some new territory for a lot of people, some really fun trails to check out. Then November 4th, we're going to be back at Medoc Mountain State Park in Hollister, North Carolina. Both of those events will be lots of riding, games, probably, as Shawn likes to put it, a very complicated sounding, chaotic game that you'll figure out what we're doing once you start it, but they're usually a lot of fun. So if you've got some female student athletes and female coaches, definitely encourage them to come participate in those. I think they get more fun every year. They're a really good time, and it's a really great opportunity to build some community beyond your own team. So definitely check those out. And then new this season, we're going to have 2 preseason adventure events. Those are going to be open to returning student athletes, and they must attend with their team. So I'll be sending out information to head coaches on how to sign up for those events. The first one will be on November 18th at the Whitewater Center in Charlotte. And the second one will be December 2nd at Browns Creek in Elizabethtown. I'm kind of excited about that one. I've never rode anything at Browns Creek other than the NICA race course. And I hear there is a lot more trail there. And I know there's a lot of things that our student athletes really want to check out because I usually have to kick them off of it a couple times throughout the weekends when we're there. So great opportunity to come check out everything else out there at Browns Creek. So definitely look forward to a lot of fun there. There'll be a lot of riding, some games and activities going on. Leonard, our new teen trail corps coordinator, is talking about coming out to do a trail workshop with teams. So definitely some fun stuff to check out. So.
To be fair to me, since you threw me under the bus,
you are right.
You said, I'm going to tell you the rules of the game. They're going to sound really complicated. And they totally sound really complicated. And then you said, but when you start to play, it'll all make sense. And yes, that was true. But the rules were like I was about to build a like nuclear powered submarine. And then what I ended up with was a little wooden boat that sailed. So that's not me. Like, I just want to be clear. That was not me. Okay.
Much like I said, the events get more fun every year. My games get more complicated every year, but they end up more and more fun. Because I think Lake James was proof of that. I don't think I've ever seen student athletes that gung-ho about a scavenger hunt / game that started with repeatedly riding up a hill. But I've never seen that level of enthusiasm about hill repeats.
It was space rocks and little astronauts and like Brian and I were space chickens, like attacking people. Like, it was great. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Some other regional events, Brian, that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, but before I go there, let me provide just a little bit of context and thanks to Shell and the Adventure Committee for thinking through a first for us adventure preseason events that came through loud and clear in the end of season survey too. Our folks really like getting together and just riding and doing some different things on their mountain bike. So this is a good opportunity for us. Thank you to the Whitewater Center, who's been very gracious to us to bring us in at a reasonable cost. And they certainly understand the mission. Outdoor enthusiasts, outdoor activities. They're pretty excited to have us there. And you're right, Shell. Cape Fear Sorba. Every time I go to Browns Creek, there's like a new section of trail built up there with some pretty cool features. So I think our folks will enjoy that. Let me when life truth maybe, or things to live by, the 3 magic questions I may have shared with both you, Shawn, and Shell, but let me share for everyone. What do you know? Who should know what you know? And have you told them? I ask that throughout the day, like in terms of good team communication and all that. But let's get the bad news out of the way just a little bit. I don't think we're going to be at Dark Mountain in 2024. Got the email today from the Park Service there, the Corps of Engineers, that they're doing work on the dam in the spring at an unspecified time and duration, which is really, really hard to plan around. So it's almost like, Shawn, we used our Dark Mountain credit in 2023 by doing it twice. So I just, as a way of reinforcing, like for that grid event, like some will get to see Wilkesboro perhaps in 2024 season, but maybe not the rest of us. And I just wanted to use that as a way to say we're working through season dates and locations. Like I said, the venue team is out. We're in contact with a lot of the venues, looking for some new ones. My intent would be to announce that by the League Summit, dates and locations, so everyone kind of has an idea. But just wanted to get that out there. Part of the complicating factor is Dark Mountain doesn't look like a go for.
I think the email I saw was like, work will start sometime in the next 8 months and will take up to 380 days, give or take.
And tend to go over, not under.
Yeah. And will probably take longer. So
I have yet to see any construction project finish on time, like ever in my lifetime. So yeah, with all that uncertainty, just not kind of counting on that as one of our locations for 2024. But yeah, so anyway, back to the preseason. There is perhaps as we consider, I'm giving everyone a preview here of 2024. I think will be a season of adventure for this league. You know, doing some adventure activities, and there's probably nothing more adventurous than driving all the way to Maryland to participate in NICA's first ever regional event. And so I still owe some more details via website updates and emails to head coaches on the particulars for this regional event. It was recognized very early on that it is a difficult event for spring leagues. Most of the participants for this regional event are in the mid-Atlantic, the Marylands, Delawares, and the like, pretty close to that location, and just finishing up their fall season. So they're kind of in the groove to do that regional event. But I would like to provide it as an opportunity for athletes to go participate in the first ever regional event. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty fun time for the weekend. So 10 to 12 November. And the general idea is Friday is like an adventure day. There will be grid activities, there will be adventure rides, and those will be open to any NICA athlete. And registration is through Bike Reg. So there's no pit zone registration required to attend. You register through Bike Reg, and all the information available is on the landing page for the regional event as the best place to find the information. The second piece of that is a qualifying race series. That's run on Saturday. And that's where it gets interesting for spring leagues, and not the best solution for spring leagues, to be quite honest. So only spring 2023 who is registered here in North Carolina are eligible to compete in that regional race. It's only high school. Because of numbers, all female student athletes from high school categories are invited. All boy varsity are invited, but only the top 15 in all other high school categories from their respective leagues are invited. And that's a numbers thing. So that's part of my drill for over the weekend, is just going through our list from 2023, cutting down who's eligible. And fortunately, that is not graduated seniors. That's the other caveat to this. And that's why it's not ideal for a spring league. But again, it's an opportunity. I think everyone just needs to have in the mindset that, you know, this is not necessarily the supported league race you're used to if you do go to Maryland to participate. And I understand one of the things that we were gnawing on, Shawn and Shell, is just that kind of inclusivity. It's a long drive for folks down here in North Carolina. It's not an opportunity for that everyone can take advantage of. Rewind the podcast. 18 November and 2 December are good adventure opportunities here in North Carolina to participate. And that's really where our focus will be for the fall. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me about the regional event. Happy to field them right now, but we'll get some more info out by next week on how that's going to look for everyone.
Excellent. All right. How about some season dates to remind people of? What do we got coming up? We got team and coach registration opening up on September 15th. And we've got student athlete registration opening up October 15th. But there's a little caveat with that one.
Yeah, so I can only say for probably less than a month now, like, oh, first time league director, what do I know? You know, I can't use that excuse anymore after September. So I was on the line yesterday with Sarah from National Registration and NICA, our own registration managers, talking through the next season, how we get set up for that. Little did I know that most spring leagues open on 15 October. We would like to open on 1 October. So I just got to clarify that with NICA that they're good with 1 October. The reason we do that a little bit earlier is so folks can register and come to those preseason events, and they have time to do that. So more to follow on the opening of student athlete registration. We'll get that hammered down by next month for sure.
Awesome. Well, I think we've kind of busted through everything we needed to. I think, you know, this past weekend was great. Brian, I get to spend a lot more time with you, like in person, than I have at all. So that was really awesome. Got to tell you about growing up in Fayetteville, about how weird it was going to other places and asking people where all their pawn shops and used car lots were. Because that was sort of the defining characteristic of my childhood. And, you know, just sharing those experiences. But I didn't share with you that I grew up on a houseboat in the Cape Fear River, and it was sort of like a little houseboat community. And rather than like having a high school girlfriend or anything like that, like I just dated the girl next door. And just over time, we drifted apart.
I could use that out here at Coastal Carolina, right? With all the water, or because I'm right down the road from Jacksonville, North Carolina, outside Camp Lejeune, Fayetteville by the sea. Our military listeners probably appreciate that. Again, yeah, if you need something pond, Jacksonville.
Yeah, if you're looking to pawn something and buy a used car, like a military town is your variety vacation land. It really, lots of things. Easy financing, E3 and up. Like I can tell you all the things, but yeah, growing up in Fayetteville, a lot of fun.
Excellent. And I'll try and land this plane. I'm going to try and segue this somehow, but it was a conversation we had. And yeah, we got to spend some time with each other because it's a little, I say less stressful than one of our weekends when all of us are just running, place to place across the venue to pull these things off. So a time to kind of, get to know one another is awesome. But we were having the conversation about our first clinic of the season was a little less attended than some of the others. It was, half full. Why is that? And I think part of it is just like we're now in back to school season. Like I think people are still out and vacationing and away, and just not the time to schedule in. And I know I'm sending 2 boys back to college here in the next week. Daughter's going to school in 2 weeks. And so, we're going through all the, school supplies and lists or whatever. And I had to ask, kid, hey, what do you think the king of all school supplies is?
I don't know.
A ruler.
All right.
Landed the plane, I think. Not well, maybe, but
let's see, Shell. Can you do better?
I always am like, I'm prepared this time, but I'm always like, oh, I gotta find a good one. And it's kind of lost on me while doing this that the point of dad jokes is that they are bad, and I just can't accept that. But I was thinking about how I feel like I almost see you all more during the off season than I even do during the season, which is hard to comprehend. But it's also been neat to see. Shawn and I as kids have been pals since I showed up in North Carolina when she was in 5th grade. But that all of our kids now have become good friends, and like that aspect of the community has been cool to watch unfold. But our kids, some of them had an eventful week at the beach together recently. So I found a beach joke for you. So why don't skeletons like summer?
I don't know.
Because unlike our kids, they have no body to go to the beach with.
Oh, I think we got to end on that. All right. Brian, just a FYI, it is dumping rain, so be prepared.
Stand by.
It's going to be a gully washer heading your way. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll be seeing you, Brian, this weekend in Asheville.
Yeah, more coach training in Asheville. I'll be out there. Yep.
And seeing all the coaches at OTBS 101. All right. Have a good weekend.